My name is Marilyn Cottrell. I'm 29 years old, and for most of the last 3 years, I truly believed I was building a life with the man I would eventually marry. Ronald Hart, 27. Charming, warm-eyed, endlessly ambitious, was the kind of person who made people feel like they mattered. When he looked at you, it felt like a spotlight you didn't know you wanted. I used to feel lucky to stand in that glow. I used to think I belonged in it. We met through mutual friends at a casual rooftop get-together in the city. I was new in town, still figuring out how to settle into my own adulthood. He was the animated one of the group, telling stories, making people laugh, spinning conversations effortlessly. I was quieter, steadier, the grounded one friends like to say, but somehow we fit. The spark wasn't explosive. It was warm, steady, something that felt safe. And I invested in it. I moved to this city for him when he landed a promising marketing opportunity. I covered the bills when he was between projects, helped him polish resumes, coached him through interviews, and never once asked for repayment. I thought that's what love looked like, choosing each other, especially when life was inconvenient. But about 6 months ago, small cracks started forming. Nothing dramatic, nothing loud, just tiny fractures in trust that I tried to ignore. It began with Sophie Lane, his new work friend. Sophie was one of those people who operated on pure charisma, quick jokes, flirty banter, and a talent for making boundaries feel optional. He talked about her often, too often, brushing it off as team camaraderie. But late-night messages started popping up, and one evening, while we were cooking dinner together, I caught a glimpse of his screen lighting up beside the stove. A text from Sophie, "Miss you, hubby." My stomach tightened. I forced my voice to stay light. "Hey, babe. Who's calling you?" "Hubby, Sophie, right?" Kind of weird, isn't it? Ronald didn't even look up from slicing vegetables. "Oh, come on, Marilyn. It's just an inside joke," he said, waving it off. "We've been collaborating nonstop on a big campaign. She started calling me that because I handle logistics like a husband would. Relax. You're overthinking." Overthinking. My least favorite accusation. I wanted to trust him, so I swallowed my discomfort and nodded. But the messages didn't stop. They became more frequent and bolder. At night, when we were supposed to wind down together, he'd be snickering at something on his phone, thumbs flying, Sophie's name glowing on the screen. Then came the social media posts. A picture of them at a team happy hour. Her caption, "Work hubby duties with my favorite partner in crime, #inside jokes." Comments piled in. "You two are adorable. Just date already." Couple goals. Ronald never corrected a single one. He even liked the comments. It was subtle humiliation, the kind only the person left out of the joke truly feels. I tried not to care, but something inside me tightened each time she posted another work hubby joke. I kept reminding myself of the sacrifices I'd made for us, the nights I spent helping him rehearse pitches, the weekends I canceled plans so he could focus, the rent I covered when his last freelance contract fell through. I'd held him together through a job loss last year, rewriting his resume line by line while he spiraled, paying our bills without a word. Back then, he'd whispered into my hair, "You're my anchor, Marilyn. I don't know what I'd do without you." But now he compared me to Sophie in little offhand remarks. "Sophie's so spontaneous, she surprised the team with concert tickets. Sophie is fun. She's the kind of person who lives in the moment. Why don't we try being a bit more adventurous like she is?" Every comment chipped away at the foundation I thought we had. One night, after coming home late from a team outing, he tossed a receipt into the trash, a fancy dinner for two at a restaurant we'd never go to because we were supposedly saving money. When I asked, he shrugged. "Client meeting. Sophie's better at closing deals, so we work together a lot." I wanted to believe him, but my intuition, the one I usually trusted, thrummed like a warning bell. And then came the moment that broke something inside me. I overheard him on the phone with his sister while I was folding laundry in the bedroom. His voice drifted down the hallway, casual, almost amused. "Marilyn's great, but Sophie, she just gets me. The whole hubby thing." It's harmless fun. Honestly, it feels natural. Harmless. Natural. Words that cut in ways yelling never could. I sat with that ache for days trying to tell myself not to jump to conclusions. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe he wasn't replacing me. Maybe I just needed to communicate better. But the truth was already in motion. It hit its peak that Friday evening. I came home from work exhausted, craving our usual quiet night in takeout, a movie, maybe falling asleep together on the couch. But when I walked in the air in the apartment felt wrong. Ronald was pacing phone in hand, expressions strangely rehearsed. He looked up, crossed his arms, and said, "We need to talk." A chill ran through me. "What's going on?" I asked. He sighed dramatically as if I were the one inconveniencing him. This relationship, it's not working for me anymore. You're stable, sure, but I need excitement. Passion. Sophie and I, we've gotten really close. Really close. My heart sagged, but my face stayed still. Close, how Ronald. He gave me a look like I was being intentionally dense. You saw the texts. The hubby thing. It's not a joke anymore. We've been seeing each other for a couple months. She makes me feel alive. With you, it's predictable, comfortable, but boring. Boring. After everything I'd carried for him. Everything I'd given up. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there letting the cruelty settle onto my skin like cold rain. So you're choosing her? He nodded, almost smug. Yeah, and I think it's for the best. You'll find someone who appreciates your predictability. My chest tightened, but all I said was, okay. I didn't know it yet, but that single word, calm, quiet, controlled, would become the turning point of my entire life. I don't think Ronald expected me to stay calm. He certainly didn't expect me to stand there without collapsing, begging, or fighting for the version of us he'd already rewritten in his head. My silence unsettled him. I watched it flicker across his face, a brief twitch of uncertainty, before he shoved his hands into his pockets and kept talking, trying to regain control of the narrative. Look, he said this transition doesn't have to be dramatic. I was thinking, you could stay on the couch for a bit until you find a place. Sophie's coming over in a couple of days so we can all clear the air, make things less awkward. I blinked. Clear the air with the woman you cheated with. He scoffed, laughter spilling out in a sharp, condescending bark. Oh my God, Marilyn. Cheated. The spark between us was already gone. You know that. Don't be childish. Childish. After 3 years of carrying him through every setback, every crisis, every moment he doubted himself, I was childish. But I didn't argue. Not because I agreed, but because something inside me had shifted into a colder, sharper version of myself. A part of me that finally understood no explanation, no plea, no logic would ever make him see the truth. He had already chosen his story. Fine, I said simply. His brows lifted surprised by how easily I accepted the end of us. But he mistook composure for defeat, and that was his first mistake. Good, he muttered, grabbing his coat. I'm staying at a friend's place tonight. We can talk more later. He left with the confidence of someone who believed the world revolved around him. Someone who thought I would sit on that couch all weekend, stewing, waiting, hoping. Someone who expected me to be exactly as he'd always painted me, predictable, safe, static. But the moment the door clicked shut behind him, I finally exhaled. The silence was deafening at first. Pain seeped in through the quiet humiliation, betrayal, disbelief. But beneath all that, something else pulsed. Resolve. I refused to be the woman he used as a stepping stone toward excitement. Not anymore. By morning, the decision was made. I didn't pack in a frantic rush. I packed with purpose. I folded my clothes neatly, gathered the books I'd brought from my hometown, unplugged the tech equipment I had bought with my own money, including the monitor he always insisted he worked better on. I dismantled the coffee station I set up for us. I pulled down the framed photos he never bothered to hang straight. Piece by piece, I reclaimed my life. By midday Saturday, half the apartment looked hollow. By Sunday afternoon, it barely resembled a home. I handled everything quietly. Canceled the joint streaming accounts. Transferred utilities to his name. Requested mail forwarding. Booked a storage unit across town. Loaded my car with the last of my things. There was no anger in my movements, only clarity. No dramatic music, no tears, no shouting. Just a woman stepping out of the story someone else tried to confine her in. Before I left for good, I wrote a note, brief, neat written, in the same handwriting he once teased me for saying it looked too formal. I placed it on the kitchen counter where he couldn't miss it. The joke's over, so are we. I didn't sign my name. I didn't have to. The drive to the motel on the edge of the city felt surreal, like coasting through the remains of a dream I'd already woken up from. I checked in under my own name, took a long, hot shower, and collapsed onto the stiff mattress. For the first time in months, no phone buzzed with his needs, no passive-aggressive comments, no little comparisons to Sophie. The silence wasn't painful anymore. It was peaceful. By Monday morning, I'd already made another life-changing decision. I called my boss and requested a transfer to our company's satellite office in another state. The opportunity had been available for months, a growth track promotion I'd delayed for Ronald's sake. Now nothing tethered me. My boss approved the transfer within hours. Turns out I wasn't predictable. I was dependable, consistent, reliable, qualities they valued, even if Ronald didn't. Over the next few days, I tied up loose ends, updated my address, packed what remained into my car, booked a long-term rental near the new office, blocked Ronald on every platform without ceremony. I didn't disappear. I simply removed myself from the places where he expected access to me. The first week alone was quiet, too quiet. I'd wake at dawn unsettled by the absence of chaos, of second-guessing, of trying to keep someone else's emotional world stable. But with each day, the fog cleared. I hit the gym again, restarted my hiking routine, reconnected with old hobbies, cooked meals for myself instead of eating in a rush between supporting him. Small victories built new strength. Weeks later, through mutual friends, I learned Ronald had brought Sophie to the apartment, expecting me to be sitting there on the couch, obedient, waiting to clear the air. Instead, he found empty hangers, missing furniture, and a single note. He had wanted drama. He got absence. And absence is sometimes the loudest answer. Life in my new city settled into a rhythm some far quicker than I expected. My days were full challenging work, quiet evenings, long hikes, and the simple relief of knowing no one was waiting to criticize my routine or compare me to someone more exciting. I didn't just recover, I expanded. I breathed again. I didn't look up Ronald, didn't search for Sophie, didn't care to watch their curated life unfold. But the funny thing about walking away is that the world still likes to deliver updates whether you ask for them or not. The first messages from mutual friends were neutral check-ins, the kind that carried casual information wrapped in just so you know tones. "Hey, Marilyn, FY Ronald and Sophie are official now," I responded politely dismissively. A simple thanks for letting me know and nothing more. Then the tone of the updates changed. They weren't celebratory anymore. They were cautious, uneasy, almost apologetic, as if people weren't sure whether to warn me or spare me. Because the pedestal Ronald placed Sophie on it splintered fast. It started with money. Ronald used to lecture me about being too predictable, but what he meant was, I was the one who made sure bills were paid, that rent was covered, that life stayed afloat. He'd never handled that weight alone, not really. And Sophie wasn't built for that kind of responsibility. She had charisma, yes. Spontaneity, yes. But no structure, no financial stability, no real plan beyond the next stimulating idea that popped into her head. Within a month of me leaving, she had moved into the apartment. Not because they were so in love they couldn't bear to be apart, but because she needed a place to stay. Her savings evaporated into half-started business ideas and impulsive purchases. Ronald suddenly found himself covering bills he didn't realize were so high because I'd quietly managed them. That excitement he wanted, it came with unpaid utilities and maxed-out credit cards. Then the arguments began. At first playful disagreements, then louder ones, then ones their neighbors overheard. Once a mutual friend told me she screamed at him in a bar because he wouldn't buy drinks for all her coworkers. I didn't respond. What could I say? He was living the chaos he accused me of being too boring to avoid. The next wave came when Sophie's facade cracked even further. People had warned Ronald long before that she was flirtatious with everyone, that boundaries blurred wherever she went. He dismissed it as jealousy or misunderstanding. But patterns eventually show themselves. I heard from someone who used to be close to both Ronald and me, that Sophie began doing to him exactly what she did to me. Late-night messages with friends, inside jokes with male coworkers, posts that made it unclear who she was actually dating, texts calling other guys future hubby with laughing emojis. When Ronald confronted her, she mocked him. "Relax, it's harmless fun." The exact phrase he once used on me. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so painfully predictable. Then came the worst part, the emotional unraveling. Sophie wasn't just unreliable, she was volatile. During fights, she threw the same insults at him he once used on me. "You're boring, you're too predictable, you're dragging me down." She belittled him, mocked his routines, and compared him to other men. Spontaneous men, fun men, the ones who bought concert tickets at the last minute, the ones who took risks. Everything he once weaponized against me became his daily reality. And then, as everyone expected except him, Sophie cheated. Not once, not subtly, not apologetically. A coworker, someone she'd been flirting with openly for weeks. Ronald caught them. She didn't even deny it. She said he wasn't enough. The words he used to justify breaking my heart came back like a mirror he was forced to stare into. After the meltdown, she took whatever money she could squeeze from him, called him pathetic, and left. No closure, no remorse. Just absence. The same kind I gave him, except mine was dignified, hers designed to wound. That's when the messages started. Unknown number. "Marilyn, it's me. Can we talk? I miss you." I stared at my screen completely numb. That emotion I expected to feel anger, satisfaction, pity never came, only indifference. I said nothing. Then came the voicemails. His voice was thin, cracking in places, trying to sound remorseful, but still carrying that familiar manipulative undertone. Look, Sophie was a mistake. You were the stable one. You were the good one. I see that now. Stable. The word he once used to demean me was now his lifeline. I deleted every message. But he didn't stop. More texts, more calls. One friend had clearly shared my new number and apologized later for it. When silence didn't work, Ronald escalated. He showed up at my old workplace not knowing I had transferred states. A former coworker texted me, "Your ex is in the lobby looking like he hasn't slept in days." I didn't even reply. He was finally living the consequences of the decisions he once framed as exciting. Still, he wasn't done. One evening, my doorbell rang. I almost didn't answer, but a strange instinct, closure, curiosity, or simply wanting to look him in the eye, one last time made me open the door. And there he was, eyes red-rimmed, clothes wrinkled, face thinner, like someone who'd been eaten alive by his own choices. "Marilyn," he said, breath trembling, thank God. "Can I come in? Please. We need to talk." I didn't step aside. "What do you want, Ronald?" He rushed toward me with words, confession, excuses, emotional debris spilling everywhere. He told me everything: Sophie cheating, Sophie draining him financially, Sophie screaming at him, Sophie mocking him, Sophie leaving him with unpaid bills and a shattered ego. He said he felt stupid, manipulated, used. Then he looked at me with tearful desperation. "You were always the one who cared, the stable one, the good one. Please, give us another chance. I promise I'll change." There it was, the hypocrisy laid bare. He didn't want me. He wanted rescue. The same stability he mocked was now a lifeline he was drowning without. "No," I told him, calm, absolute. That single word sparked something dark in him. His face twisted. "No, after everything you just left without a fight, you walked out like a coward." I stayed steady, like you walked out emotionally long before Sophie arrived. He sputtered. "That's different." "It wasn't different," I said. "You just didn't expect me to have the strength to leave." I closed the door on him mid-sentence. And this time the silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was final. After I shut the door on Ronald, I expected peace. A clean ending. Silence. But men like Ronald don't accept endings they didn't orchestrate themselves. And women like Sophie aren't the only people in his orbit who enable him. The first call came the next morning. A number I didn't recognize. I let it ring. Then the voicemail notification appeared. "Marilyn, this is Lena, Ronald's sister. You need to talk to him. He's falling apart because of you. Don't be cruel. Be an adult and handle the mess you made." I listened to it once, jaw tightening, then blocked the number. The second message came through email, a joint letter from his parents. Polite, performative, judgmental, in that passive-aggressive way only people who've never taken responsibility for anything can manage. "Dear Marilyn, we have always liked you. Ronald has told us how you abandoned him without warning. He is hurting. Please come back and sort this out properly. He deserves a second chance, and you owe it to the relationship you shared." I literally laughed. I didn't owe anything to people who rewrote history the moment it served them. Ronald abandoned me months before he ever packed a bag. He just did it emotionally, privately, and with Sophie's help. I deleted the email without replying. But the campaign wasn't over. Over the next week, Ronald used multiple burner numbers to send everything from guilt trips to insults. One message read, "You're heartless. Enjoy your perfect little life. When I'm back on my feet, you'll regret this." Another, "Please, Marilyn, I have no one. Just talk to me." His desperation wasn't about love. It was about losing the safety net he always assumed would be there. So I blocked every new number one by one until the digital noise finally stopped. And then, months passed. Quiet months. Healing months. I focused on the life I was slowly building. My new job became more fulfilling. I settled into my apartment decorating buying plants, learning the creaking sounds of the old wooden floors. I reconnected with friends I'd drifted from. I invested time in myself, hobbies, evening classes, hiking groups, and somewhere along the way, without forcing it, without searching, without needing the validation, I met someone. His name was Arthur Brooks. We met through a colleague's birthday dinner. He was kind, calm, thoughtful, in ways that felt almost unfamiliar after years with someone who thrived on chaos. Arthur asked about my life without pushing. He listened more than he talked. He didn't need to be the center of attention. He made small moments feel meaningful. And slowly, gently, I let myself trust again. We started dating quietly, comfortably, naturally. No games, no inside jokes designed to humiliate, no comparisons to someone louder or more exciting. Just peace, the kind that feels earned. 8 months after leaving Ronald, a close friend of mine back home was getting married. I debated whether to go. Mutual friends would be there, and the possibility of Ronald showing up lingered in the back of my mind. But it was a friend I loved like family, and I wasn't going to avoid my own life just to dodge someone from my past. So Arthur and I flew back together. The wedding was beautiful. Warm lights, soft music, that unmistakable hum of people celebrating love in all its messy, shimmering forms. Arthur held my hand as we walked in, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like someone bracing for impact. But whispers started sooner than I expected. Apparently Ronald was there, and apparently his life had gotten even messier. Someone quietly told me, he's still unemployed. He had to move back with his parents. Things got bad after Sophie left. I nodded politely. It wasn't my business anymore. But of course, the world likes drama, and Ronald had always needed an audience. He spotted me during the reception. His steps faltered, his eyes widened, and for a moment, the entire room around him seemed to blur. Then he saw Arthur's hand around my waist, and something in Ronald's expression cracked. Later that evening, while Arthur and I were getting drinks at the bar, Ronald approached. Desperation clung to him like sweat. "Marilyn," he said, voice strained, "can we talk alone?" Arthur immediately squeezed my hand. He didn't step in front of me. He didn't posture. He didn't challenge Ronald. He simply looked at me for confirmation. "Do you want to go?" I shook my head softly. "No. Whatever you need to say, you can say it here." Ronald's jaw flexed. His eyes darted to Arthur with open jealousy. "Who's he?" "My boyfriend," I answered calmly. He swallowed hard, like the word hit him physically. "Well, I'm glad you're doing well," he said, bitterness threading through the awkward smile he forced. "Really, I am. But I've changed. I swear I've changed. I'm in therapy. I've learned a lot. And Sophie, she destroyed me. I was stupid. But you," his voice cracked, "you were always the one." I held his gaze, not cruelly, not triumphantly, just honestly. "Ronald, that's your journey," I said, "and I hope it leads you somewhere better. But mine doesn't include you anymore. I built a life without the drama, without the disrespect. I'm not going back." He blinked rapidly. Tears formed, then turned sharp with anger. "Irrelevant," he whispered the word, trembling. "After 3 years, you're just cold." I nodded once. "I cared, deeply. But you made your choices. I'm simply living mine." Arthur gently placed his hand on my back, a reminder that I wasn't alone, not in this moment, not ever again in the same way. Ronald stood there for a second longer, face twisting between regret, rage, and realization. Then he stormed off, muttering to someone nearby, who gave me an apologetic look. Whispers followed him across the room. Everyone had heard pieces of the story by now. And as Arthur and I left the reception early, the night air cool and soothing, I felt something profound settle in my chest. Closure, peace, freedom. The kind you don't fight for, the kind you choose. Arthur and I walked out of the reception hall into the crisp night air, and for the first time in what felt like years, my heart wasn't heavy. It wasn't confused. It wasn't aching or overthinking or trying to outrun the echo of someone else's cruelty. It was calm. The music from the ballroom faded behind us as we stepped into the parking lot, and Arthur laced his fingers through mine. No pressure, no questions, just presence, just warmth. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. And I realized I was. "I am," I said. "Really, I am." He smiled, the kind of smile that made my shoulders drop and my breath ease, the slow, earned kind. The kind I never knew I needed. We drove back to the hotel with the windows cracked open, letting in the cool breeze. Streetlights flashed rhythmically across the dashboard. I leaned back into my seat, letting the distant laughter and wedding chaos dissolve into the night. I didn't think about Ronald again until the next morning, when mutual friends began texting me versions of the same message. "Marilyn, what happened last night? Ronald made a scene after you left." Apparently, after our conversation, he drank too much, tried to pull people aside to tell his side, tried to paint Sophie as some villain who corrupted him, tried to paint himself as a man who'd only fallen because he loved too hard. But the truth had already been circulating for months. People knew. They had seen the social media humiliation, the reckless behavior, the cheating, the crash. They'd heard the fights. They'd watched Sophie rinse him dry and toss him aside. The more he tried to rewrite history, the more people saw through it. By the end of the night, even his closest friends had stopped coddling him. One friend texted me, "Honestly, you got out at the exact right time. He's lost in his own lies." And another, everyone could see you've moved on. He needed that reality check. I stared at those messages, and for the first time, I didn't feel bitterness. I didn't feel vindication. I felt done, truly fully done. Arthur and I spent the rest of the weekend visiting old friends and familiar spots from my past places. Ronald never cared to understand, places I'd once felt too overshadowed to enjoy. It felt like reclaiming fragments of myself I'd forgotten. When we finally flew home, the world felt lighter. My apartment, my plants, my warm, toned lamps, the small stack of books on my bedside table felt like a sanctuary instead of an escape. And my future wasn't something I feared anymore. It wasn't a question mark shaped by someone else's approval. It was mine. A few weeks later, I learned Ronald had taken a temporary job outside the city. Someone said he was trying to start over, though every story about him seemed laced with chaos. I never asked for updates. People just volunteered them, as if closing the book on him wasn't enough unless the ending was officially confirmed. But what struck me was this: I no longer cared. Not out of apathy or superiority, because he simply wasn't part of my story anymore. He was a chapter, a long one, a painful one, but a finished one. Arthur became the quiet, steady presence I didn't know I craved, not because he fixed anything, not because he filled some void, but because he didn't shrink me. He didn't punish my stability. He didn't treat loyalty like a burden or predictability like a flaw. He valued the things Ronald mocked. One evening, while cooking dinner together, Arthur glanced over and smiled. "You know," he said softly, "you're the kind of woman people build a life with. Not because you're predictable, but because you're real." And something in me healed in that moment. Not because of the compliment, but because I believed him. Months passed and life settled into a gentle certainty, the kind you only appreciate after surviving emotional earthquakes, the kind you don't take for granted after someone weaponizes your kindness. I thought a lot about the girl I used to be, the one who apologized for her stability, who held everything together while someone else tore it apart, the one who wasn't allowed to be enough unless she performed excitement for someone who wanted to feel entertained instead of loved. She didn't vanish. She evolved. She became a woman who knew her worth, who didn't beg for crumbs, who didn't wait for someone to choose her over chaos. A woman who chose herself. Looking back, Ronald leaving wasn't the tragedy I thought it was. It was the catalyst. It freed me. It forced me to rebuild. It taught me what peace actually feels like, what respect feels like, what it means to walk away without burning yourself in the fire someone else set. The truth is simple. I lost a man who thrived on drama. I found myself, and I found someone who sees me clearly, not as a backup plan, not as an emotional crutch, but as a partner. And that will always be the better ending. Thanks for listening. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you enjoy stories like this.